Hey everyone, welcome back. We're studying Matthew 5:10 today. Have you ever been persecuted for doing good? Most of us haven't really. Persecution is quite a strong word. You know, we might get mocked a little by work colleagues if we won't go to the pub on a Friday night, or get called a Bible basher if we try to preach. Might lose some friends if you start conducting yourself differently and you won't go clubbing with them once you got saved. But have we really been persecuted? Well, Jesus said in Matthew 5:10, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Persecution, really, when you look at the word persecution, it actually means people pursuing you with an intention to harm you. And Jesus here is particularly addressing persecution that comes from righteousness. And if you remember, I said it's translated as righteousness, but the actual word is justification. The righteousness that's granted to you by God, not from your own works. So we think when we read this, that we think it's being persecuted when you choose righteous actions or you speak up against sin. But if you look at that original Greek word, it's the same word that's used in Matthew 5:6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, which is justification. And as I said, that's the righteousness that's imputed to you by God because of your faith in Christ, not because of your own works. So if you think about people who turn to Christ from the law and performance-based religions, these people can truly be persecuted and even have their lives cut short to preserve the honor of that religion. People have been killed by those who actually believe they're doing a service for God because they're taking them out. They're blasphemers, they've gone into false religion, they're apostates, and so they actually take their lives away. And if you think of that in the context of what was happening in the time when Jesus was speaking this, remember who Jesus is speaking to. He's speaking to Jews who were born and raised under the heavy burden of the law. I said before in one of my other videos, they were under 613 different laws by the time that Jesus came. And he's been teaching about justification. He's been teaching them the whole process of being saved and taking his yoke upon you, which is easy, and his burden is light. He's speaking about being able to enter into a righteousness outside of themselves and outside of the law. But now he's warning them and encouraging them. When you grasp this justification and you start to live it, focusing on love for God and love for your fellow man instead of obeying the letter of the law, those who are still under the law are going to persecute you. They will even pursue you with slander, accusations, being a blasphemer, you're a lawbreaker, just like they did with Jesus. In some places, people could have their lives cut short to preserve their existing religious structure and to nullify their voice. Look what happened to Saul. He persecuted those people who were coming out from under the law and were getting saved by grace. But then he met Jesus on the road to Emmaus, and now he's converted and he's become known as Paul. And word has spread. This man who formerly persecuted the Christians has now become one. And so the Jews kept tracking him down and they were plotting to kill him. He was a high-profile Jew. And he's now teaching that striving to keep the law is not going to save them. And they need justification by faith in Jesus. Just like the Pharisee and the tax collector that Jesus spoke about in Luke 18:9-14. The Pharisee lived an outwardly religious life. He was striving to keep all of the requirements of the law. But Jesus said it was the sinner who knew who he was and knew all of his struggles and all the darkness in his soul. He wouldn't even raise his eyes to heaven. And he just prayed, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." Jesus said it was him, not the Pharisee, who was justified before God, declared righteous outside of his own righteousness. The righteousness is imputed by God. That's the same root word as our text in Matthew 5:10, when Jesus said that he was the one who was justified. It's the same. But law hates grace. It always has done. It's always persecuted it. Right the way back to Ishmael and Isaac, the legal first son persecuted the son of promise, who came by faith. Then God gave the inheritance to the son of faith. Paul wrote to confirm as well, when he had his own persecutions, Galatians 5:11, If I still preach circumcision, why am I being persecuted? In that case, the offense of the cross has been removed. So what's the offense of the cross? The offense of the cross is the same as the stumbling block as well that's spoken about. You can't earn righteous standing with God. It has to be received by grace, which is justification. And that's a real offense by people who think they're doing well at upholding the law, because it means that the worst of sinners have the same standing before God as those who are striving to be righteous. We're all on an even plane. We all need the righteousness of God. And that's an offense to people who are coming to God based on their own righteousness. We often, human nature, like to grade people, and we like to compare ourselves to other people and see where we fit in. So we can look at people and think, oh, well, I'm better than them. Yeah, I'm doing better than them. Oh, they're worse. They're a sinner. So I'm doing okay. But we have to all compare ourselves with God's high standard of the law, which is unachievable. And so we all need God's grace. And it's when we realize that and we get that revelation, it's very, very hard to judge others for their failings, because you know you are the recipient of the same grace that they need. So as you have received, freely give. And this is the offense that causes the persecution that Jesus is speaking of in Matthew 5:10. When you get this, you get justification. You stop striving to keep the law. You realize you can't do it. I'm done with it. I've tried. It's too hard. I don't want to be under that yoke anymore. I want to enter the rest of Christ. And then people will slander you. And then people will persecute you. And they will say the same kind of things that they said to Jesus. You're a law breaker, you're a blasphemer, you're apostate, you've denied the faith, you're using grace as an excuse to sin, all of these kind of things. We're not using grace to sin. We are changed. We are new creations. We don't go after sin like we used to. But we've just learned that we can't be justified by the law, like the Pharisee. And then Jesus goes on to encourage them that as much as it's hard and as much as you are going to be persecuted because of you standing for grace rather than law, yours is the kingdom of heaven. It's worth it. Because the dominion, the authority, the blessing, the miraculous working power of the King's authority and domain belongs to you when you receive the justification by faith. That's our study for today. I'll see you in the next one.